Pittsburgh Police say they will no longer respond to calls that are not in progress emergencies. This is amid a staffing shortage. This is fallout continuing from the defund the police debacle from the summer of love. Let's get into it. Let's go to Pittsburgh. Let's see what's going on. Here we go.
What was the big takeaway today?
Yeah, Susan, residents of the city will see a major change in the way police respond. They will no longer respond to calls that aren't considered in progress emergency. That means calls like criminal mischief, theft, harassment, and most burglary alarms will all be handled by an enhanced telephone reporting unit. That means residents.
Okay, that's the only time I'm going to stop this. An enhanced telephone reporting unit. An answering machine. Your call is going to go to an answering machine. If you're in Pittsburgh and you're like, is this 911? Oh, please leave a message. We're not here. We'll catch up with you in a week from Sunday. How excited would you be to hear that? Your hard-earned taxpayers' dollars, somebody's breaking into your place. I guess it's a burglary in progress. This is nuts. This is nuts. But, it's not shocking, right? You only have so many cops. What are you going to do?
Will file a police report over the phone. Officers will not respond unless it's an emergency. Also, between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., there will be no officers at any of the 6 stations throughout the city. Call boxes that link directly to 911 have been installed for people to use in case of an emergency. And during the overnight shift, there will be as few as 20 officers to cover the entire city. The chief said today the data supports that.
Yes, it's enough to cover the entire city in those hours when we have 8% of the time people are calling. I'm confident in the decisions that we make that it impacts this bureau and the city in a much better way than we have in the past.
Now, the chief also acknowledging today that some of these changes are due to staffing shortages. He's down to 740 officers, well below the 850 they would like to have. Now, coming up new at 5, residents, city council, and the police union all weighing in on these big changes that begin Monday. Live in the studio, Rick Earl, Channel 11 News.
This is not just Pittsburgh. These are police departments all across the United States. They're not recruiting enough people. Been reading about Seattle, and we're going to talk about it in probably half an hour here or so. There's just not enough people with interest. And, shockingly, it is not surprising that people don't want to be a cop. You want to be a cop in Pittsburgh? You want to be a cop in Seattle? No, I don't think you do. I don't think you do. The pay in Seattle is way below what other nearby. We're going to get into that. But what the police chief is basically working on, what the police chief is talking about is personnel management. He's got XYZ for a budget. He's only got this many cops that are on board, that are able to go out and serve the public. So you've got this much coverage and you've got this much bandwidth that you have to cover. All right. So the majority of our calls are coming in from here to here. Those late night or early morning, depending on what time you get up. That time period, yeah, you're going to get that enhanced telephone recording process instead. It's just, it's not shocking. This is the culmination of that geniusness that was defund the police. Now, I did some research on Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh does have Democrat leaning city council. Let's put it that way. It doesn't look like they, and correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't look like they actually defunded their police. But you've definitely got an anti-police sentiment, as you do in most big cities. We hate the cops, except for when you need them, except for when those, criminal statistics just shoot through the roof. And we got to get some more cops up in here. Let's get some more cops. Let's read this story. Pittsburgh Police announced this week that they will no longer respond to calls that are not in progress emergency. I mean, that part right there is just like, okay, so what are you responding to? How about the no cops at the police department, the individual call, the precincts, I think it was. Pittsburgh Bureau of Police have made major changes to its operation as it battles staffing shortage, including no longer responding to what we already talked about. Police Chief Larry Scirotto announced in February that during the early morning hours, this sounds hopeful, doesn't it? Early morning hour. Okay. When is most of the stuff going on? Early morning hours, there will be fewer officers on staff and lower priority calls will get sent to a telephone reporting unit rather than a person. Then you can save on 911 call operators too. I mean, who doesn't want that? I mean, we're just saving money left and right, except you're making the city basically less safe. Yeah, your call is going to go right through to an answering machine. Is somebody returning those phone calls? Is somebody answering the phone? Is there anybody out there? The chief said that the changes need to be made so that his 740 officers can more efficiently serve the community. He's got XYZ bandwidth. He's got to do something. All right, that's what we're going to do. Not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, but he's doing something. My thought is, well, this should work out fine, right? I mean, I'm not personally living in Pittsburgh, so for my Pittsburgh people, I mean, this should make you concerned. Like, where is our tax dollar actually going? To these enhanced recording, to the recorder. It's going to the recorder, right? Remember when you used to run home and, did anybody call? No, there's no blinking light on my machine. Remember you were so tied to that damn machine. It's like, who's going to call me? One of my tasks in the appraisal office, Reynolds and Klein, back when I didn't own it, was to, if I got there early, was to review the messages and see who called, see what happened, because we didn't have cell phones, right? No cell phones. So now you've got an enhanced telephone reporting unit. According to WPXI, calls for theft, harassment, criminal mischief, and burglary alarms will all be handled by the telephone reporting unit. Or not, because it doesn't do anything. It's just a recorder, right? It's just a recorder, all right? So who is going to handle them? And then by the time somebody does review them, what are they going to do? What are you going to do? Hey, we got some criminal mischief going on here that happened 8 hours ago. Yeah, those guys are, it's 11 a.m. and those guys are in bed. I mean, they're going to be sleeping until 2:30 in the afternoon. We're not going to be able to catch them. We get burglary alarms. Oh, that's handy. You get a really nice security system. Okay. Yeah. Got this great security system. And I'm pitching you a house now. Got this great security system. You know, it's got sensors on all the doors. It's got sensors on the garage door. It's got sensors 10 ways from Tuesday out on the patio, around the hot tub. I mean, the walkway up to the front door. But the little problem there is that, cops won't come. Oh, okay. All right. I feel better already. Yeah. When there is an event that is not in progress, we're going to take an en route, a reroute that call to our telephone reporting unit. Okay. Who determines? I mean, how do we figure out? I got somebody coming at me right now. Does the answering machine take that? He said the early morning hours is when there are the lowest amount of calls, and from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., police stations will not have an officer at the desk. This just sounds like a recipe for disaster. This sounds horrible, but I get it. You've got to make a budget work, and you've only got so many cops. Now, the curious thing, which we'll get into in a little bit, is how many police officers they have. They have damn near as many as Seattle does, and Seattle is 775,000 people incorporated in city limits. Pittsburgh is 300-something thousand. So any which way you look at it, nobody's going to come to your house. There's going to be no police service for these amount of calls that we used to have. Sure, it should work out fine. It'll work out. It'll be good. Those criminals, they're just going to back off and go, you know what? We need to make things a little bit more Steven here. So therefore, we're not going to, criminal activity between 3 and 7 a.m. No can do. Got to cut those numbers down. So he said the early morning hours when the lowest amount of calls. Data shows from between 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. we had 8% of our call volume. We had 33% of our personnel working during those periods of time. So he's trying to match up what you've got going on here, when you need the help and when you don't. Burglar alarms will require a second confirmation before an officer responds, because Scirotto said that in a year of 9,500 burglary calls, the majority of them were false alarms. Oh, that's frustrating. But it cost the department 4,000 personnel hours. That part to me made sense. I mean, but if you're on the end of having a burglar come into your home, you might feel differently. I'm just saying, you might be in the camp of, I just want a cop to come no matter what. That's probably where I'd be, right? Send a cop. Don't care. Send a cop. It's not that we won't respond to alarms. It's that we're going to require there to be a second verification, authentication factor, such as it's not just the front door. There's interior motion, there's video, there's audio, there's glass break. I don't know. If your house is getting broken into, can you confirm that you're being broken into? Yeah, right. Other schedule changes include officers switching to 10-hour shifts for 4. So they're going to do 4 10-hour shifts for 4 days a week and 1-hour breaks to focus on their mental health. Now, you might scoff at that. You might laugh at that. I don't get a mental health. What the cops deal with is just horrific. You wouldn't want to deal with the amount of just insanity that these people. I read a lot of, crime stories and just the ridiculousness and the beatdown that the cops take. I mean, it's just, I did a story not long ago that most of you didn't tune into. Diehards probably did, but it was a Bellevue police officer who fell off. His motorcycle basically ejected him while he was covering Kamala Harris, vice president detail in Seattle. And he fell like 50 feet down onto Interstate 5 and he got really messed up. Then the city of Bellevue after 6 months, wasn't going to basically continue his healthcare insurance, even though the guy's basically in a wheelchair and unable to walk, barely able to do physical therapy, and he couldn't work. So there's that whole story. But the bottom line from that is I think Bellevue's going to work that guy out. They're going to figure something out, get him kind of going again. But, the 1 hour of mental health break a day, the ridiculousness that we have in society now. Think of all just the insanity of all the people on drugs and the people that used to be in mental institutions. Cops deal with that now. Cops are on the front line of that. So at the same time, we did all this defund the police. This is the greatest thing ever. Let's just crap on policing as a profession in general. I'm sure this will work out great. Let's divert all those funds into community social worker systems and whatnot. And I'm not saying you shouldn't divert money. You shouldn't place money into community systems that help, foster good things. But you shouldn't be taking it away from police protection. And in so many communities, the police department does not have the ability to recruit and successfully recruit. And by that, I mean, bring in enough people to offset the number of officers that are retiring or just flat out quitting and saying, no more, we're not doing this. This is a terrible profession. I'm out of here. Let some other young person take over my spot because I don't want to do this anymore. This is not worth it. The pay isn't worth it. And, I got that broken shoulder and I got that left leg that doesn't work all that great anymore. All kinds of injuries and dings that you take, but particularly with policing, like the guy in the motorcycle, right? What I was also going to say in the mental health for cops is that you've been working, a lot of these police departments, they have been working around the clock. And the only way that a lot of these police departments are able to make things go is to have officers do overtime. You can only press, I don't care what profession it is, you can only press people for so long. We used to find that out in the appraisal industry when we'd go through a refinance boom, meaning when rates would drop, half a point, whatever it was. We went through, some periods in the late 80s where rates they were making these huge drops. So we'd have all these orders come in and we you got to get them done. So there's only so many appraisers and you can't hire anybody when you're in the midst of one of those refinance boom runs. Just doesn't happen. Everybody's already busy. Nobody has time to train anybody. You're out there doing the appraisals, coming back, writing them up, sending them out. Just boom, boom, boom. But you can only have people work 7 days a week for so long. You can only have people do overtime for so long. And things start to go a little wonky mentally, right? I know there's a lot of other professions that are in the same boat. You've got nurses, good example. You've got all of these professions, but there's just not enough people to go around. And, you can only squeeze. You can't get blood from a turnip. Well, you can only squeeze the turnip for so long. And after a while, there's no more there either. Right. So Bob Schwartzwelder, he's the president of the union that represents Pittsburgh Police, told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that due to the cutbacks, there are only 14 or 15 police officers on duty now between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. 14 or 15. So if you have one incident, one major incident, boom, those cops, they're all done. There's no other police to cover the whatever else you've got going on. Sorry you're getting robbed. Sorry you had a terrible car crash. I mean, it's not viable. It's not viable long term, right? I think the strategy at this point is a hope and a prayer that they can base everyone on data. It may pan out to be correct. It may be disastrous. This is what the president of the police union in Pittsburgh is saying. It may be disastrous. You've only got so many personnel, so you can't make up cops. You can't just, you can't send a social worker out there. So what do? All right, take the time period where you've got the fewest calls and you make a judgment call and you go with it. Might be horrific. We don't know. We'll find out. District Attorney Steve Zappala told WTAE that he was critical of the changes and they didn't make sense to him. Okay. All right. And you are not a police officer, but I understand the sentiment. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Is there any other large city in the country that there's a part-time police department? I mean, does that make any sense to any of you guys? It doesn't to me, Zappala said. Oh, it doesn't to me either. But what's the alternative? What are you going to do? You still got the criminal activity going on. You don't have the supply of cops. You've got demand out there. Bad guys are still out there doing their thing. So what do you want to do? Which option do you want to take? You don't have it. All right. I guess we'll go part-time during the wee hours of the morning. I don't understand what he's doing. I have to sit down with the chief about that and just some of the things in the policing areas. I don't get it. Well, okay. Yeah, there isn't much to get though. You got to make a call somewhere. Maybe he's making the wrong call. We don't know. We don't have the data to look back. But any which way, I guess, would be my assessment of this. Any which way, it's not going to be a good call. It's not going to be an easy call. It's going to be a terrible call. And the citizens of Pittsburgh are going to suffer, just like the citizens in Seattle. Hey, don't bother calling the cops because it may take them a long time to get here. You've got that sentiment. If there's enough issues going on in Seattle, cops do their best to get out there, but there's just not enough of them. And Pittsburgh has almost as many as Seattle. Seattle's a way, way bigger city. Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey supported Scarotti's decision to make cutbacks on staffing. I'm sure they had a little talk beforehand, don't you think? The chief has made clear that there was a cutback, but there was going to be patrolmen there and there would be patrol people ready to go. So again, that's why I'm saying you always have to talk to the person that's implementing the new rules. That's the chief or the public safety director, Gainey said. What do you do? What do you do? You don't have enough cops. You've still got, the city didn't go away, did it? City didn't go away. Where did it go? Nowhere. It's still there. Still got the same amount of criminal activity. That's where these folks that just went down this defund the police were just so mentally incompetent. That's the only word you can put to it. And in the next story I'm going to talk about, we're going to watch a video from September of 2020. And you can just see the insanity of the people that were pushing the defund the police. I'm holding my baby. This is one segment I just looked at. I'm holding my baby, and I want the American public to know, or some damn story, that I'm on the right side of history. And she's one of the council members in Seattle that voted to defund the police. Yeah, no, you're not. But you're on videotape on the wrong end of the decision. We've proven that. Remember how if you said anything about, negatively defunding the police, if you were critical of defunding the police, that you were basically, oh, no, we're supporting that right now. We're on board with that. And then shortly after that, it was in 2021, early 2021, it started to come back around. It was early, maybe it was June of 2021. But I remember doing stories thinking, boy, that didn't take long. We figured this one out. But by then, the damage has already been done. So many police departments had already been defunded, and yet you've still got this fallout. And the fallout is happening, 3-4 years later, right? It's literally years later because nobody wants to be a cop. The overall sentiment hasn't changed. Don't like the police. They're terrible human beings. They murder everybody in the BIPOC community. When in reality, that's just not what's going on. But this whole mental position of cops are bad. Now, here's what happens when entire communities and councils, city councils go down that road. People aren't dumb. They realize, this is not a profession that I really need to get into. This is not something that, I need to be involved in. And so on greater scale throughout the United States, there are some police forces that are doing okay. And there's many, many like Pittsburgh that are suffering greatly. And they're having to make decisions, hard decisions, because you've only got so much bandwidth and you're not able to recruit right now to backfill the number of cops. What did Pittsburgh say they wanted? Like 850 and they've got 700 something. That's not crazy bad. Seattle's lost 700 police officers since 2020. Yeah, that's a lot. And hasn't, we're continuously on an either a break even or we're still losing cops. We're on a negative, just haven't been able to get that traction. And I think so much of it has to do with that whole defund the police sentiment and how much police have been crippled at being able to do their job. They've just been hamstrung. Just, you can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. And then we wonder why the criminals run free when knowing full well, if I commit this crime, this is going to go to a voice recorder box machine. It's going to go to it's going to go to somebody's, answering service. So why wouldn't I commit this crime? There's no real reason. And knowing full well after somebody does review that call, it's already happened. You don't have the police officers to follow up. So what's going to happen? Criminals know there's opportunity. So Pittsburgh, we'll be keeping an eye on that situation, and we'll just have to see kind of where it goes. But yeah, not good. Not the right direction you want to be heading. But it is what it is, right? It is what it is. All right. I'm going to wrap up this one. Thank you so much for being here. I will keep reporting on Pittsburgh. We don't take a look at Pittsburgh very often because most of the time they've just got their own thing going on and don't have huge stories. But this is one that I thought needed to be called out because, I don't think that's going to work out all that well. It's already not working all that well. Thanks again for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next segment. Bye for now.